So maybe I'll start with housekeeping. For those of you, for this first exercise from the Fahrenheit movie or film, it's the same thing. It's just a fancy name. For this film, some of you haven't submitted your assignment or the first exercise. So please make sure that you do that. It's important because it's due today, and I'll give you a little extra time to do it, but at a certain point, then I start knocking points off. And the beauty of these exercises is if you complete them, you get 100%. So it's a great way to bolster your grade if that's a consideration for you. And there's not a ton of these exercises either. So make sure you do that. And I don't know, there's maybe about 8 or 9 of you who haven't, so that's a lot. What else? I'm going to do a little review. Maybe I'll share my screen here. Let me just get into advanced screen share mode here. Takes a minute. I need to get like a button on my computer for stalling. Okay, just gonna find this. Here we go. Pardon me for the time it takes to do this. There's really no other way to do it. Okay, modern cinema. Go into this little review that I've cooked up for you. Okay. Here it comes. It's loading. I'll have a sip of my tea. Okay, so a little review. Look at me, I'm growing here. I didn't know you could actually do that. That was kind of fun. Okay, so this is last week. We talked a tiny bit about censorship and surveillance that were, in general, themes of the film Fahrenheit 451. And, I briefly kind of talked about how this film was situated within its era, and we compared and contrasted with more current day stuff. I linked it to a bunch of weird things like the face swapping technology that's currently kind of in play within our society and maybe soon in the film industry. We don't know entirely. Okay, let me actually shrink myself. So this is, I'm not going to say from who, but here's a few little examples from your exercises that were ones that kind of made me think, and I have some things to link them to. Okay, so one of the questions was about the film versus our society now, what's similar, what's different. And this person kind of made the point that, essentially that Fahrenheit 451 is a book. It's about how books are so important and about how the world would be a terrible place without them, and how every other form of entertainment is lesser to the point of making your brain into mush, and that books are somehow more righteous than any other shit, such as video games or whatever. Seems like an incredibly childish argument. So this is a really interesting point. Like, why are books so... why are they prioritizing books above all else? And then they also kind of went on to say that in the time of the ancient Greeks, that Socrates also hated new inventions that he thought would turn the next generation into idiots, which was writing. So what this person's kind of keying into is this idea of technophobia, which is a real thing. And this person's absolutely kind of right in pointing these things out. And that is... basically, when something new comes along, people freak out and they're afraid of it. So examples of technophobic ideas, they can be found in multiple forms of art, ranging from literary works like Frankenstein, Metropolis, in Fahrenheit 451. And many of these works portray the darker side of technology as perceived by those who are technophobic. So as technologies become more complicated and harder to understand, people are more likely to harbor anxieties related to the use of technologies. Now, there's also something else going on, and that's that there's with books and these sort of forms of knowledge. Some forms of knowledge are still being seen as being, more important or more deep or whatever than others. And, this is sort of shifting all the time in society. Now you see at universities, there's courses about television shows. So we have whole, advanced level university seminars about, a single rap video or whatever. So there's like quite a lot of that kind of hierarchy is shifting, but it is a thing. Okay, another person said that the society from Fahrenheit 451 and ours depend more on technology and social media. Both worlds get offended very quickly, and to make everyone happy is to censor things that will offend or upset people. So in the film, they burn the books because books have sad stories and people get upset, and that's bad, and everyone should be the same. So they burn the books. Whereas now, I think this person's sort of tapping into, social media trends currently. One is this sort of term that's really up for debate right now called cancel culture. And, sometimes calling out bad things that happen is great because it brings people to justice. But other times, sometimes it might not necessarily be productive. So I think that this person's kind of thinking about that, the way that when somebody does something wrong and it goes into the realm of social media, it's really hard for the person to be able to fix the problem or change their behavior, because you might be branded, hey, you said this, you're bad, game over for you, and this might not be good for a society in terms of we all make mistakes and we're all trying to become better and grow. And so what we should be encouraging is a society where, and this is my opinion, a society where it's possible to say, oh, you're right, I'm wrong. I'm going to do better. But we're not really encouraging that. So that was an interesting point. There was another one that said, another student said, another similarity that is present in the modern society, in the society from the film, is the role of technology. And technology has taken over our society. In fact, we base our knowledge on the internet, for example. When we want to search a recipe, we turn right away to Google. Yeah, it's true. The way that we use our phones and computers is almost an extension of our minds. See, an extension of the mind. The way that we use computers are like an extension of our mind. It's hard to imagine learning or doing anything without looking it up on a search engine. And so this is sort of a interesting dilemma. Now, I'm going to show you a couple things that are from our contemporary society related to Fahrenheit 451 and books, and related to this last student's point, kind of about technology and knowledge. Okay, so I'm going to give you actually, first I'll just show you a quick thing, but I'm going to give you something to watch. First, actually, you know what? I'm going to screen share the first one. This is going to be a little bit complicated, but hey, hang on, bear with me. Remember these discussion points, though, because we are going to talk about these in breakout rooms for 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back as a group, and they'll have you present. So the questions that I'm kind of asking are, what do you notice about the other workers in the films? Let me just duck here. I can put that in the chat so that you have a reference point. So let me just get out of here and get into here. Okay, bear with me. Going to regular screen share mode. Yeah, here it is. Jason. Okay. So, books. books and Google. Okay, so right now, and this has been going on for over a dozen years, a lot of the books that we have are becoming digital. They're going into Kindle or on tablets. And the tablets are cheap. And, when you Google a book, usually you get a few pages of the book that you can see. So what's happening is that these books are being scanned by people, by human beings. And the human beings have to sort of interface with a machine. So what's happening is that companies like Google are for free scanning the collections of universities, but then they have some kind of gateway in a way to have owning all of these copies. So I'm going to show you a trailer to... Okay, so this is a Twitter feed here, and this is a guy who's sort of showing what these machines look like, and these are human robotic interfaces for scanning books. So all of these old books are being scanned. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an 11-minute long video to watch, and it is a current day-ish. I mean, this is from, what was it, the mid 2000s or something. And this is an experimental kind of documentary, or it's in the sort of realm of almost video art. And it's done by a friend of mine, and he worked for Google. And in the video, not a lot sort of happens in the actual video itself, but there's very subtle
Google employees.
Sorry. There's very subtle elements, like the color of the frames of the images that he's put there. But it's mostly a story that he tells about working at Google and noticing that there was another building on the property that, that was sort of, that he didn't have access to. So I'm going to give this to you to watch. It's purely narrative with some images. Hopefully it works. It's 6:16. This full video is about, I don't know, it's just over 10 minutes, 11 minutes, which seems really long. But
in September 2007,
bear with it. Just
I was hired jointly
story.
by Transvideo
And
Studios
then we'll come back,
Google,
and
both headquartered in
I'm
Mountain
going
View,
to
California. Transvideo had a contract with
show
Google
you
and took care of 100%
another
of their video
trailer after
production in
that,
Mountain
and then I'm
View,
going to put you in
and
discussion
sometimes
groups because
elsewhere.
we're going to talk about
My
what
labor
it
was sold to
means
Google
for
in the
these
form of a
books to be
9-to-5
scanned.
job.
Okay,
I had access
so
to a personally
it's 6:16 now. Start watching this video and come back
unprecedented amount of privileges,
in roughly
but was
11
not entitled
minutes.
to
So
the
let's
ski
say
trips, Disneyland adventures,
6:35.
stock options,
No, that's
and holiday
15.
cash
Something
bonuses
like
from their team of
6,
temporary Santa Clauses. Thousands of
20,
people with red badges, such as me, my
6:30.
team, and most other
That
contractors,
should be enough
worked
time.
amongst thousands
Okay,
of
go.
people with white badges
I'm
as
gonna
full-time
disappear.
Googlers. Interns are given green badges. However, a fourth class exists at Google that involves strictly data entry labor, or more appropriately, the labor of digitizing. These workers are identifiable by their yellow badges, and they go by the team name ScanOps. They scan books, page by page, for Google Book Search. The workers wearing yellow badges are not allowed any of the privileges that I was allowed. Ride the Google bikes, take the Google luxury limo shuttles home, eat free gourmet Google meals, attend authors at Google Talks and receive free signed copies of the author's books, or set foot anywhere else on campus except for the building they work in. They also are not given backpacks, mobile devices, thumb drives, or any chance for social interaction with any other Google employees. Most Google employees don't know about the Yellow Badge class. Their building, 3.1459, was next to mine, and I used to see them leave every day at precisely 2:15 p.m., like a bell just rang, telling the workers to leave the factory. Their shift starts at 4 a.m. I found this social arrangement interesting, and at a certain point, I decided to investigate the rationale behind Google's decision to exclude the Yellow Badge class from most privileges the company has to offer, despite the fact that their labor takes place in a Google building with a Google sign out front and are being contracted to Google by another company just like my team, and just like other informational laborers, the kitchen staff, the shuttle drivers, the custodians, and more. Eventually, I asked a superior on my team if I could borrow a camera to go out in the parking lot and videotape the yellow badged workers leaving the 3.1459 factory. That footage didn't turn out very well, so I did it again a week later. I decided if I were to represent these workers leaving the factory, it would be important to develop a relationship with the film's subjects and welcome their perspective into the video. A week later, I approached a few of them to see if they would be willing to have a conversation in the near future about their jobs. The first girl mostly ignored me and started talking to someone on her cell phone. Two other young men said they'd be happy to talk about their work and accepted business cards with my email address. Another young man I approached was also willing to discuss his work. About the job, he briefly said that it's not what I want to be doing, but it pays the bills. Before I could give him my card, a very agitated, chubby white male with a red badge wedged himself between us and demanded that I show him my badge and tell him who my manager was. He told me the yellow-badged workers were extremely confidential people doing extremely confidential work, and I was standing in an extremely confidential area. He then reprimanded the yellow-badged worker for talking to me. I then found out the chubby white man knew what I was doing because the first girl I had spoken to followed the instructions in the back of her yellow badge, which is to call a certain manager if anyone asks about the work of the yellow badge class. The chubby white man brought me into the lobby of the 3.1459 building and told me to wait while he grabbed a security guard. A security guard with a red badge, and therefore more privileges than the yellow badge ScanOps employees working in the same building as him. He returned with a very sedate black guard and explained the situation. The guard wasn't aware of how confidential the work within the building actually was, but agreed to report this to his superiors in Google's campus meet space security. I walked 40 feet out of the extremely confidential area and into my building to continue working. The next morning, I received a call from one of my managers who I'll refer to as Marco. Google security had told him about what had happened the day before and wanted to finalize the issue, which apparently means coming to a conclusion on the reason and outcome of the security breach so that the issue can be filtered and separated neatly into their bracketed accounts. I told Marco my reasons, which you'll hear in just a moment, and he passed along my statements to Google security. Shortly thereafter, Marco called me back and asked me if I'd get on a conference call with Ralph, the millionaire who owns Transvideo. I had met the man once and he didn't know who I was, so this conference call made me quite anxious. Ralph got on the phone and said, "So Marco tells me you're writing an expose piece on Google." He told me the issue was very serious because it could jeopardize Transvideo's contract with Google and potentially lead to 60 people losing their jobs. I explained my actual intents to Ralph, and Marco chimed in to say he never told Ralph it was to be an expose. Ralph asked me to issue a letter to Google security explaining my intent. Here's that letter. To whom it may concern, yesterday I was outside the Google Book Search building, which is adjacent to the building I work in, and had the chance to talk to a few employees while they were leaving work. Most of them are people of color and are supposedly involved in the labor of digitizing information. I'm interested in issues of class, race, and labor, and so out of general curiosity, I wanted to ask these workers about their jobs. I'm aware of internal mechanisms for discussing labor issues with Google, and had no intention of defaming the company. I was not aware of how secretive the book search project is, but now understand how seriously my curiosity could jeopardize not only my own job and Transvideo's relationship with Google, but also my legal situation because of the non-disclosure agreement I signed. I apologize for bothering you with this innocent mistake and can assure you that in the future I will be more cautious about respecting confidentiality at Google. Sincerely, Andrew Wilson. Immediately after I sent the letter to Ralph and Marco for review, Ralph wrote back to me. Thanks, Andrew. I think this will help clear up any misunderstandings. Also, Marco said that you had mentioned that this was a personal project, relating to the request you had made for an interview with one of the staff. Can you elaborate what this personal project is? Thanks again, Ralph. I responded, Hello, Ralph. The personal project at this point is nothing beyond a general curiosity towards the ScanOps workers. I don't know enough about the situation to pursue any further understanding, and now that I know it's so super secret, I probably will never have the chance to. I think Google does a lot of great things socially and politically, but found it interesting that these workers, who perform labor similar to that of many red badge contractors, such as software engineers, custodians, security guards, etc., are mostly people of color and cannot eat Google meals, take the Google shuttle, ride a Google bike, or step foot anywhere else on campus. With backgrounds in sociology and political philosophy, I wasn't approaching this as an act of muckraking, but rather as an analysis of the transition from industrial labor to informational labor and what this could mean in terms of race and class. Also, I saw this as a nice way to meet people who work right next to me. Best, Andrew. More than an hour passed, so I figured Google Security was satisfied with my explanation and had finalized the issue. But Marco called back in a frenzy, saying that Google Security had proof of me outside, filming yellow-badged workers leaving the 3.1459 building on 2 separate occasions. I told him this was true, and he said that Google Legal was now involved, and they needed the videotapes immediately. I found one of the tapes in my bag and brought it to Marco, but confessed that I couldn't find the other tape. He relayed this information to Google Security and Google Legal, and they reiterated that they needed the tape immediately. The only place I could imagine it would be was back in my room in San Francisco, and Marco relayed the command of, "Go get it, right now," back to me. I borrowed a coworker's car and drove 40 minutes to San Francisco, searched my room for a half hour, and came up with nothing. On my way back, I called Marco to tell him I found nothing, and said I must have used the same tape for both shoots, and taped over the first day's footage with that of the second day. This isn't what happened, but I really could not and still cannot find the tape, and I knew Marco needed a conclusive answer for Google Security and Google Legal. He got back in touch with them and then called me back, telling me to return to the train's video office instead of my office at Google. When I arrived, Marco told me to wait in the Sunset conference room. This is the room where I signed on with the Transvideo team at Google and had my quarter-year reviews. Marco entered the room with Bert, the general manager of Transvideo who hired me and executed my reviews. Bert had a questionnaire, to which my answers were, I was given permission to use the camera by Carl, a superior. The tape I used was mine. I do not have possession of the footage I shot anymore, and it does not exist in any other form. Bert then presented me with a document that would terminate my employment on the basis of me using Google's video equipment during working hours, although it was during my lunch break, without the approval of Transvideo's executive management. Marco then interjected into Bert's official explanation to say that Google was actually putting pressure on Transvideo to fire me because of my investigations of the 3.1459 building and the people who work there. Bert followed me back to Google and gave me a cardboard box to pack my non-Google issued belongings up. I told him I could take the shuttle home, as I've gotten on without my badge numerous times, but he insisted on driving me to the Caltrain station. On the drive over, I told him that losing my job right now isn't all that bad, as I was planning to quit in 2 months to prepare for grad school. He said that everything happens for a reason, and that he was glad I was being philosophical about it. I told him that's not really philosophy, and he didn't have much to say after that. I boarded the Caltrain with my cardboard box and made it home around 8 p.m. In September 2007, I was hired jointly by Transvideo Studios and Google. Both
Okay, welcome back. For anyone who may have recently arrived, I think I saw Alpha pop in. I'm not sure. We have completed. Has anybody not finished watching this Workers Leaving the Googleplex? Okay, it sounds like you all have. You can hear me. Yes. Okay, great. So this is a pretty strange little documentary clip, right? But it's, if you think about it, when you go to Google this book to say buy it, okay, I want to buy this book. Now there's a few things that happen. One, you get a preview, right? And in the preview, you get the cover, and then you get the text. Now, sometimes this text is from a scan that's been cleaned up. And then sometimes they also include the original photograph. Now, for all of the books that are for sale in the world, a human person somewhere in a warehouse has done this labor of scanning this book. You know, that this is sort of a bit old, but Google had said that they intend to scan every book ever published, which is kind of amazing and a bit odd. So what I'm gonna do now is put you guys in rooms. And ding, ding, ding. What we'll do is put you in rooms, and I've put in the chat, everyone knows how to open up the chat, right? There's a bar at the bottom of this thing, and the chat is there. So I'm gonna put you in a breakout rooms with each other for not too long, maybe until about 6:40. So about 7 minutes, and then I'm going to bring you back to tell us what you talked about. I've put some discussion points here in the chat about this Workers Leaving the Googleplex. The questions are, what does the author notice about the other Google workers? what happens to him at the end, why, and what does it mean if Google owns all the digital scans of books instead of libraries? So we're kind of thinking about these questions in relation to the themes of Fahrenheit 451, but also in terms of general discussion. So I'm going to open these rooms, get in there. There should be about 3 or 4 of you per room. So in you go. Okay.
Okay, so the first question is, what does the author notices about the other Google workers? Yeah, wait, so just to make it clear, the yellow badge, like, workers are the ones that, like, they're, what do you call this? They're like, what are the yellow badges? Are they like the less opportunate or something like that?
Yeah, something like less privileged, I would say.
Okay, yeah, less privileged. So like what he studied here is like what he realized is just a difference and of like badges that they have. Like, yeah. I think that answers the second question, what happens to him at the end and why.
Yeah.
It's like with the tape and the video things that he recorded. Okay. And then what does it mean if Google owns all digital scans of books instead of libraries?
I think it means everything could be free. I don't know. Yeah. It's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
True. And like now it's like more accessible, I guess, and it's easy to get books. Yeah.
20 more seconds. I need a timer video here. Let me put my microphone in a better spot there. Hopefully that's better. 4 seconds. Okay. Looks. Okay, that looks like that's everybody back. I think, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's us. That's us all back. Okay, so very quickly, it's kind of the most, what's it called? Very monotonous yet scandalous video. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is very quickly and, almost like a 60-second kind of pitch. We're gonna hear from each group. Now you could have one person talk, or you could all kind of, unmute and just sort of discuss things. And basically all we're sort of looking to hear was what you discussed in relation to these points, and if there was anything that anything specific that came up. And did you answer the questions, or did you talk about other stuff? 60-second recap. Okay, room 1, that's the big group. There was 4 of you, Jeremy, Jordan, Megan, Patricia. Does one of you want to let us know behind the scenes what happened in your room? Hello. Jeremy, Jordan, Megan, or Patricia. One of you guys is gonna have to unmute yourself and say what happened in your room. Did you meet? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, miss.
Okay, well, that's good. Okay, so room 1 is kind of dying out. I'm gonna circle back to you guys. Or maybe I'll just call on someone. How about Patricia, are you there? Can you unmute yourself and talk to us?
Yes.
Okay. What went on in your guys' group? You can be the leader who does the synopsis here.
Well, we didn't actually talk, so anyway. So,
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened? You went into a breakout room, but then no one was there?
Kind of.
Okay.
I tried to write, but I think no one answered me, so yeah.
Okay. So it was just a void.
I think, I don't know.
Okay. So, well, that's not
But
great.
I can, I don't mind to do what I think about, so yeah.
Sure. What did you think about that video? Was it interesting? Was it slow? Why did he get fired?
I think actually it was very interesting, very like a lot of information. Like a lot of people maybe don't know how it works with the Google things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the author gave a lot of information, of even when he was saying about the email that he sent, about the problem that happened. So I think it was very important. I think it's more information for us to know more about, not only know that Google is a big company and has a lot of information and a lot of sources, but yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't necessarily know or think about like where those book scans come from, and aren't aware that there's also in these in the sort of world that builds the internet for us, that there's higher social hierarchies and groups of people that are put in positions where they can't go up, they get stuck at the bottom. So
but even I think Google is one of the, in my opinion, also Google is one of the most important social media, one of socials in everything, networks. So I think I think it was 11 or 12 minutes. The video
Mhm.
was it give all the information, even though it was not that long. I can say
Mhm.
it's everything at the same time. I don't know. It explains everything with a lot of details, and so yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of what's it called? Like it's almost he has this sort of boring, monotonous voice. But it is packed with information and yeah, and intention. Okay, thank you, Patricia, for saving the day for room 1. Okay, room 2, Charles, Julia, Zachary, one of you guys.
Okay, so first off, and this is unrelated to like the 60-second thing, it's outdated. I
The
mean, he
Google
worked there
Plus.
he worked there in 2007, 2008. I know from firsthand experience that Google has updated a lot within recent years. I've actually worked with people from Google at like different events and stuff, so there's that. So like I can tell you that it is outdated in that way. So he brought up the issue of race within these workers. Now, the problem with that is that it's considered by many what would be considered as a menial job, like almost like farming and fields and stuff, which tend to be in those types of sectors. It tends to be minority groups who are working those types of jobs, because people who are of, say, even like Caucasian or like Black or whatever, generally we have an ideal that, oh, we're too good for that, so we won't do it because it's usually hard work, long hours, and low paying, which it is. Hence why it tends to be the more minority workers who take those jobs, because they're willing to do that, because as one of the person says, it pays the bills. And that's all that mattered to them. So what happened to him was obviously he got fired. He got fired for what would be considered breach of contract, because essentially he broke the contract he signed. He wasn't supposed to film them. He even admitted that he filmed them. He didn't get permission to do it. So because of the fact that he brought up the race and he tried to justify it, but honestly, in my opinion, again, my opinions are not affiliated with Google. Like, I'm not affiliated with Google in that way. I just have to say that. But because he broke his contract, and in that way especially, he opened up a big amount of problems for Google and his company, but mainly in this, we'll talk about the Google side of basically he's accusing them of only hiring a certain ethnicity, which is a human rights violation. And
Yeah, I think maybe what he's pointing out more is that they're taking advantage of that. Not necessarily, it's not like on a contract or anything, but they're looking at the situation saying, we want cheap labor. Here's a group that's socioeconomically oppressed, and we're going to take advantage of that. So I don't think
still a human rights
it's the
violation.
workers like to sometimes not everybody has the same opportunities,
Yes,
and
I will admit that
companies for sure, some companies will take advantage of that, and you'll really see that in the next short clip that I'll show about the scrubbers or whatever, or cleaners, people who clean the Facebook and stuff like that.
And even if it is like that, that still is a human rights violation, because it is against the law to do that, because that is still at its core discrimination. And it did open up that form, and I could see that's why they would want to get rid of him, essentially. And now, I mean, he's published this. It's, I'm guessing, common knowledge at this point, since it's been out for, 11 years now was when the video came out, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, essentially, he just was like a whistleblower in a way, and a lot of companies don't like that, especially when they are in gray areas of doing potentially illegal stuff.
Yeah, they very much, I think, like a lot of those really large companies kind of want everyone to just be super into working there.
Yeah.
Very positive, and there's different, I think what he's really pointing out in this is just how there's different circumstances for different groups of people.
Yeah.
And the people that have the hardest circumstances are sort of put off to the side and made more invisible. So when people talk about being a Google employee, nobody talks about them. They talk about the people who are, like at the buffet and on the buses and having all these perks. So
which are awesome, by the way.
So it's what he's doing is kind of critiquing the culture there, I think.
And as for the Google owns all things, we did touch upon that, but more in the sense of it is impossible for them to own all digital scans of anything for a few points. One being anti-compete laws, which Google has gotten in trouble with within the past 4 years, because it was 2018. They got into it with one of their subsidiary companies of YouTube with the ads, how they were running ads for Google products more than any other products, even though other companies were paying to run ads for their own products, which went against the anti-compete laws. Also, there's other laws in place that would prevent that, but also no one actually owns, there's certain things that people cannot actually own once it enters the public domain, and books are one of those things. Like, for example, this year, The Great Gatsby actually just entered the public domain, meaning you, me, pretty much everyone owns it. And while you can still buy and sell copies of it, bookstores are doing it right now, technically you can still obtain it for free as well, and because no one owns it. And it's the way that works.
You can't just walk into the store and grab it. No one owns the publishing rights.
Exactly. So, and when it comes to online stuff like that and book scans like that, most of the time these companies are offering it for free, because essentially that's what it is that the law is it's up to 70 years after the author's death, after the publication runs out. I know that's how it works for music. I think it's the same way for books as well.
But then it fluctuates sometimes, or laws fluctuate with emerging forms of mediums too. So sometimes there's a gray area.
But pretty much it's not really a concern that they'll own every book scan, because it's pretty much impossible. There are things in place that would prevent them from doing it. So and that's essentially what we talked about.
A bit about IP. Okay, so thank you. And we'll go to room 3. There's Jason Joseph Keela. One of you guys here, Jason or Joseph, or is it Kyla or Keela? I'm not sure. Why won't one of you unmute and say a couple things, just briefly, about what happened in your room? Did you meet in a room? Yes or no? Okay, but you went into the room and you talked about the points, and everybody was there. Okay. Okay, good. So you did discuss, but you just kind of talked about the questions, or did you just answer them, or what happened? Okay. Okay, cool. Well, thank you, Jason. That's good. What about room 4? What happened in there? It was Alexandra, Gabrielle, and Savada.
Well, we touched on each of the points briefly. Sorry, it's a little dark in here, but if I turn on the other light, my face gets hidden by the light because I'm super duper pale. So basically, we talked about how the author of the video brought up the issue of minorities working in such like disadvantageous, like, you know, circumstances and in an environment like that, and how they were denied certain privileges just because they were a certain type of worker. But what we also noticed is the hours that they worked seemed like they wanted to, like, Google wanted to hide them. It's like, oh, you're just gonna work these hours because we want you to be out of sight, out of mind for everybody who works at Google, almost. So that's a little scary. It almost makes it feel like a legal labor camp because they're paying their bills, but they're also treating them like crap. He got fired for breach of contract. So like while they were within their rights to do it, I don't think it was like very ethical. It was definitely one of those things where it's like, yeah, you're legally allowed to fire him, but should you? For just, you know, asking a simple question of like, hey, how do you find working here? What's it like? You know, and you know, I mean, as for the last point, you know, group 2, Charles brought up some really good points. So that eases a little bit of anxiety of like Google owning literally everything, but also the point of what if we kind of went off script a little bit and discussed like, what if you got somehow booted from Google and their services for whatever reason? That's the end of your career potentially if you have an email with them that you use. So yeah, there are other emails out there and things like that, but like there's a lot of like you would have to invest a lot of time and a lot of money in getting around, you know, Google's ownership of your things. And like, what if you stored your personal identifiable information in Google Drive just so, you know, you have it there for you whenever you need it? If you're applying for school, say your birth certificate is on there and now they own that picture. Well, they don't own the rights to that picture. Them owning that picture is a very scary thing. I work in fraud recovery, and just the concept of that gives me chills down my spine because of what I know what people do with your information once they have it.
Yeah, even in this sort of era of Zoom and teaching and lectures, like right now I'm teaching at 3 schools. Charles has his hand up. 3 schools, and they all have different policies. But one of the schools, I think I told you this story last week, Concordia has a class where the teachers were taking a class that had Zoom lectures pre-recorded by the professor. And then they write the professor questions and stuff. And at a certain point, the student realized that the professor wasn't alive and hasn't been alive for over a year.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
And so the professor, when you record your lectures on the school platform, they own them. So they could, under some contracts, potentially show them without you or your consent. So these are like, a lot of these questions are really, floating around right now for sure in terms of like not knowing where our information is. And it relates to, if the sort of Fahrenheit theme was remade for right now, it would definitely be related, less so to actual publications, but more to our information and how it circulates, I think. Charles, did you have a question?
So actually, that's what you said about how like they can like end their services at any time. Actually, just recently happened with Google. As of December, they actually shut down Google Play Music in favor of YouTube Music, which is also a paid service. Now, with the way they did it the proper way of letting everyone know months in advance, hey, we're going to do this. You can migrate everything. But if you didn't migrate, like personally, I haven't used Google Play Music in over a year, but still, if you had anything bought through the Google Play Music store where you actually bought the digital album, you weren't just streaming it, that purchase would be wiped out and you essentially would have bought nothing, but you weren't getting your money back on your purchases. So that's a very valid point, what you made, and actually has recently happened with the company we're talking about.
Mhm. Okay, so I think that's all the groups. Was it all the groups? Yes, it was. Okay, great. So now what we're going to do, it's 7:04. Let's just do one more quick little 1-minute trailer that I'm going to screen share with you, and then we'll take a break, and then we're going to tackle modernism and surrealism and all of the important content that is looking more at the past and less at the current day situation. So I'm just going to screen share this trailer with you. No. Okay, so before I play this, I should mention as a warning that there may be some content. It's only a 1-minute long trailer for a documentary film that is a couple years old now, I think. And there might be in it some small kind of clips that have imagery that is graphic. There might be some references towards sexual violence and negative things in general. So please be warned if it's upsetting. It's very short and it shouldn't be too bad, but if it's upsetting to you at all, please feel free to not watch. Okay, here we go.
Delete. Ignore. Ignore.
Delete. Delete.
Ignore. Ignore. Delete.
Companies decide what can stay up and what must be taken down.
Delete.
Outsourcing should be disturbing to people in democratic societies.
There are tens of thousands doing this work. All of it's done in secret.
They need to be anonymous because we have a contract sign in. Ignore.
Our decisions will impact what 2 billion people are thinking.
If you commit one mistake, it could trigger war.
Delete. I've seen hundreds of beheadings. Ignore. Delete. Ignore. Delete. Delete. Ignore. Delete. Delete. Ignore. Delete. Delete. Ignore. Delete. Delete.
The danger is that we might lose democracy because we're willing to give it up.
Okay, so super dramatic, very scary, very contemporary. Oh, hang on a second here. Somewhere, just give me a second. So I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. I can still hear this trailer. Oh my gosh, what is happening? Okay. Okay, I'm having a little, what's it called? A little technical meltdown, which means now might be a good time for a break. Okay, so it's 7:08. Let's come back at 7:15 and we're gonna cover a lot more stuff. So we'll take a 10-minute break here. What is going on here? Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm back. We're back. Hopefully you're back. Okay, so now I'm going to take out my headphones here for a little break. And yes, we're gonna go back to a slideshow, and in between I'll be showing a couple short clips, and we'll kind of have a look at those. So give me a second here to get myself oriented back into this scenario. Okay. So the Cleaners, this movie looks really really terrifying, and it's kind of an extension of the Fahrenheit and a closure of the Fahrenheit 451. Oh dear, I think I'm in the wrong slide. Yeah, I am. Hang on here. Okay, it's this one. There we go. Give me a second for it to load. Okay, here we are. Okay, so very quickly, we're gonna kind of go way back to the beginning here and talk about how some of these different techniques that happen in filmmaking. Starting with Italian neorealism and then all the way up to sort of surrealism, which will be the film that I send you off with, is sort of like a sci-fi surrealist combo about contemporary dating. Headphones stopped working. You could unplug your headphones and then your computer will just play. As long as you're on mute, it should be fine. That's Savannah there is having some issues. That's my okay. Maybe okay, here. Maybe unplug headphones and stream the sound. You should be able to hear me directly through the computer speakers. Okay, so Italian neorealism. So during this period, way back when, before films started getting weird, what was happening was their films were less expressive, but still very expressive, just they weren't using a lot of the norms of today. So the Italian neorealist series of films is often talked about in terms of when you talk about realism. What is that? Mainly these were films about daily life. They had non-professional actors. Sometimes there is a well-known actor in the mix as well. But generally they were exclusively shot on location, mostly in rundown cities as well as rural areas. And they were kind of part of the post-war era. They were usually looking at daily life, the sort of living conditions or the reality of the poor and the lower class, the working class, which was called the lower class at the time. We don't really call it that now. Characters oftentimes exist with simple social order, within a simple social order. And performances are mostly constructed from scenes of people performing mundane daily tasks. It was kind of about regular life, how you survive, what you do, where you work, where you get your money, stuff like that. Savannah's having some technical issues. Go get your headphones, Savannah. Jeez Louise. Savannah, go get your headphones. Okay, so, and you're gonna need your headphones because I'm gonna make you guys watch a trailer for a Italian neorealist film And what I want you to look at, this trailer isn't too long, so that I might miss it because he's running around looking for headphones. But what I want you to look for here is like the total lack of special effects. This is not what we're used to. There's not very much complex camera movement. A lot of the people aren't idealized, you know, like you see movies now, usually most of the people in the majority of movies are kind of, you know, they're pretty good looking. You know, maybe not see this as much in some of these older movies. So notice that there's no abstraction or formal expressive elements. The camera's not shaking around. There's not flashing color. There might be some music, but it's really just, you know, a sort of like a look at this period in someone's life. It's not dramatized, but it's dramatic. So I'm going to screen share this trailer, I think. Let me just pull it up. Okay. Let me just stop being in here and then go over to here. Okay. Okay. Okay, so here we go. Hopefully the sound plays. If it doesn't, somebody please please flag me. I'm just gonna get my headphones on so that there's not any feedback situation. Okay. Okay. Now, I'm gonna. Okay, hang on. Let me just. Okay. We're going to get out of here. Okay, that's good. Now we're gonna get into here. So that's a wonderful film, Umberto D, and it's about this older gentleman who used to be a civil servant. You know, he's lived all his life working in, you know, as a civil servant in the public kind of office, and then he becomes old and he has no children and he can't afford his rent and he has a dog to keep him company, and he's having a hard time, and that's basically it. Like, you know, and he's sort of a proud stoic character. So in these types of films, this is sort of characteristic of how they're built, how they're made. You know, they oftentimes, I think I've already covered this, but that the acting's kind of not super self-conscious or theatrical, and it's like it's just like watching someone living their life, you know. Okay, moving on. So what sort of happened was there was a lot of films that were like this, that were depicting real life, or that were trying to, you know, reveal the truth about daily life. And then suddenly things started to get kind of weird. And this is sort of in some ways what people term when they talk about modernism. It's basically like a sort of shift where things became a little bit more abstract. You know, modernism in art, visual art, was concerned sort of with everyday life, perception, and time, and a kaleidoscopic fractured experience of urban space. So you see that in paintings and a lot. Whereas with cinema, the techniques of, you know, closing up on someone's face, or panning, or having a memory flashback, or a dream, or a montage, these things don't happen in real life when we're living our life, you know. We're just moving through real time. But in cinema, what started happening was they were cutting things up and really experimenting with how you can show things. So very broadly, you know, there was an increase in that at this sort of time period. Rather than attempting to represent the world realistically, it became more sort of expressive and impressionistic. And I'll leave, you know, some of these slides for you to reference as reference material when you do your film analysis. So, okay, it's great that Samad is back with headphones. So when you're kind of looking through some of these films that I've asked you to read over, there might be specific questions that you can reference back to these slides. So in some ways, modernism, what was happening was filmmakers and artists in sort of general were looking at the process of making as being part of the product of what you make. And this sort of as a metaphor in some ways, you know, that it became that, you know, the art and the writing and also the films were less like a way to see something else, you know, like a window, and more like a stained glass window where you're seeing something else, but there's also an embellishment and there's something that changes the perspective of what you're looking at. And that's kind of what these modernist films are doing. They're using the film itself to change the perspective of the thing, to emphasize stuff. So at this time, you know, there was a lot of different types of art going on that were influencing these films, changing them from just being about regular life to being more expressive and weird looking and colorful. And you know, there was artists from the avant-garde artists to expressionism to impressionism. You know, the film that I kind of gave you to watch by Salvador Dali with the eyes is sort of, you know, that's an example. When you look at these sort of forms of art, like expressionism, you know, you're looking at like dramatic color, right? Dramatic color and movement, you know, it's more sort of expressive than if you had just painted it to look realistic. It's adding something about a psychological state, about how you feel. And often it's kind of like a bit charged, you know? So a lot of filmmakers were kind of looking at these things and incorporating them into how they created their films. There was also, you know, Impressionism, which was a field of painting that was really mostly about light, or like the impression of a feeling of a space, like an atmosphere or something. So you see filmmakers, you know, exploring kind of making things diffuse, or trying to capture light in fog in a room as being important to the feeling of a space. So they were stealing and working with the same ideas that these painters are working with, incorporating them. Okay, so we're gonna do another quick clip viewing before we run out of time here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at two clips, Vertigo and versus Birds. I'm going to play those, and then I'm going to put you in groups. We're going to talk about them very quickly, and then list them. So I'm going to put you in big groups this time because it's more of a list exercise. But what I'm asking you to look for in this, actually, instead of putting you guys in breakout rooms, what we'll do is we'll use the chat. Just because I'm kind of looking at the time and being like, I want to finish on my deadline here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to screen these 2 clips, and in them, I want you to write in the chat, and I want everybody to at least put one thing in there. What formal elements and techniques do you notice being used to create an emotional state? So like, like color or camera movement, or what are they doing that's not just straight up recording something as it is? What are the filmmakers doing to make it have feeling? So we'll do Vertigo first. Let me just get the clip loaded up here. I'm gonna have to make sure I have the right tab for you. Do I? Yes, I do. Okay, great. And okay, so everyone open your chat windows. This is a challenge to you all. List the things that you notice that this filmmaker is doing. Okay. Uh-oh. Hang on a second. Okay. Okay, so still a little bit stressful. So now we're gonna look at another one. So, that one we're looking at, lots of colors. We got some flashing, a lot of red, which is, pointed out here in the chat as the stress, anger, and blood. This is definitely a red reference for sure. Color of the different moods. We're looking at contrasting motion, transitions, and close-ups on everything with different colors as sort of a stress and nightmare scenario. It does give you a sense of vertigo. It does. And I know that as someone who's actually had vertigo, the real one where you fall down. But yeah, so it's quite expressive, right? Alfred, you've done it again. Yes, he has. Okay, so now we're going to look at another one. Different treatment. Same maker. Okay, here we go. Let me just this. I hope I have the sound on.
I want you to go as quietly as possible. Do not, make a sound until I tell. Then run as quickly as you can. Now, does everybody understand? Yes. All right, John, you lead the way.
Oh. Okay. I have close-ups on their facial expressions. So, yeah, we have, here it's not about the colors so much. It's more, where am I going here? It's more, we have a bunch of other stuff going on. The sound is quite prominent. We've got sort of just general sense of fear, the camera running with them. There's kind of a filter on the crows, and the filmmaker puts you in the moment up close without kind of letting you off the hook to a cut to something else. You're sort of stuck there in the scenario. And there's flat eye level angles as well that kind of makes you feel like you're with the person, you empathize, and then right up close on their facial expressions. I think there's something wrong with me because every time I see this scene, I like laugh in the first few minutes. I don't know why I find it so funny. But yeah, so I mean, you can kind of see here, okay, I'm not the only person laughing at, a group full of school children running down the street being attacked by birds for some reason. This is something that in the beginning I find a little bit humorous, but I think it's the datedness. It's, it's like, it is what it is. But so you can see here that these sort of techniques are really, really in full force. And okay, so I'm gonna go back to here. Give me 2 seconds. It's definitely dated. I mean, it's dated, but you do see this is in the sort of beginning of when they're getting into using these techniques. You know, now we have all kinds of stuff, like we can face swap the face of one person on a fictional body, and it's really, you know, we're kind of in a totally different era. But all of these things that we look at or know of came from somewhere, right? So they came from these developments. So, okay, we're just gonna catch up here. Okay, so then, then once sort of they figured out kind of moving these different things around, at the same time, surrealism was kind of coming up. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. No, okay, great. Surrealism and constructivism were also kind of had a clear influence on the development of aesthetics of cinema at the time. So the sort of understanding of modernism is for sure involved with that. Surrealist cinema is a modernist approach to film theory, criticism, and production in Paris in the 1920s. That's when it kind of started. It's still going today. And it's not so much like a movement as it is a technique or a tendency. And the film that I'm going to send you away with to watch over the break has this tendency. So the surrealism movement in the beginning used shocking, irrational, or absurd imagery and Freudian dream symbols to challenge the traditional function of art to represent reality. So you see juxtapositions, and sort of, you know, a little bit of shocking imagery. This film that I had you watch a clip of before is, you know, a classic kind of example. You know, it's almost, for our current day eyes, it's almost hard to watch, right? It has no plot in the conventional sense of the word. You know, is there a protagonist? A little bit, not really. So there's not really a story or a narrative. There's just a kind of chronology of disjointed and jumping events. So there's the initial once upon a time, and then there's 8 years later. But the events and characters are just very abstract. And it's kind of like a dream logic, right? It's just flowing imagery that, you know, could be thought to be a sort of about the psychoses of humans. And, you know, it's pretty abstract, right? Like, you know, a lot of these like sort of tableaus that are created aren't things that happen. You know, like, I mean, maybe you could have ants in the palm of your hand, but it's not, you know, these are not sort of realistic situations. They're concocted, and they can either just be absurd for the sake of absurdity, or they can be about kind of psychological states or feelings. A lot of the sort of surrealist films, and also films in general, started at this time kind of having montage, which is, you know, a rapid succession of images to illustrate an association of ideas. So you know, this surrealist film is like that, but you also see montage being used in, you know, sports broadcasting on the news, or music videos, or wherever. It's basically where they can just chop up time and put a bunch of clips together to summarize something that's happened over a long period of time. So this is a really major technique in making films. Maybe I'll give you guys a little clip that does a better job of explaining it, I think, than me. Let's see. Okay, I've told myself to do that, then that's what we shall do. So give me a second here. I'm getting, oh. Okay, hang on. So this clip is 5 minutes. Prepare yourselves. I think this is our last clip that we'll watch today. So let me just, and it's not a clip of a film. It's about montage, and it's an analysis of it with These kind of explanations. It's great. Okay. Here we go. Ding dong. Hopefully that comes through for you.
And his famous methods of montage.
Okay.
Hi there. Today we're going to talk about Russian filmmaker and theorist Sergei Eisenstein and his famous methods of montage. Since the word montage has come to mean any edited sequence, it's important to note that while all montage contains editing, not all editing is true montage with a capital M. If the cut simply shows us another physical angle of the scene, coverage as it is commonly known, this is not montage in this Soviet sense of the word. According to Eisenstein, montage was combining shots that are depictive, single in meaning, neutral in content, into intellectual contexts and series. In other words, two neutral images colliding to illustrate a third, undepictable thing. So now that we have a basic understanding of what montage is, and isn't, let's dive into Eisenstein's 5 methods. Metric montage is cutting according to an exact measured meter or length of time, irregardless of the content of the shot itself. Eisenstein cites the patriotic demonstrations from the end of St. Petersburg as an example of metric montage. Here, the cuts are made irregardless of their individual content, but rather to create a sense of chaos amid the gunfire and explosions. Another utilization of metric montage is in ratcheting up tension by shortening the pieces while preserving the original proportions of the formation. Also referred to as continuity editing, rhythmic montage is the easiest to spot and most widely used method of montage. Everything from car chases to dialogue scenes utilize rhythmic montage.
No animal jokes.
Well, I only got the chance to say one because we only did one show.
In rhythmic montage, each shot's practical length derives from the specifics of the piece and from its planned length according to the structure of the sequence. The Odessa Steppes sequence from Eisenstein's own battleship Potemkin is a prime and most frequently cited example of rhythmic montage, and indeed has been homaged and parodied many times throughout the years. Now, montage methods are not mutually exclusive, and metric and rhythmic elements are certainly found within our next 2 methods. Tonal montage is based on the characteristic emotional sound of the piece. That's great, Sergei, but what exactly does it mean? Well, think of tone in this sense as any visual or oral characteristic that 2 different shots could share in common. An example from the more recent The Revenant perfectly illustrates not just one, but several instances of tonal montage in sequence. In the following edits, it is a motif of fogginess or haze that unifies the shots. There are other tonalities you can use as the basis for your montage as well. Wong Kar-wai uses graphical or compositional tonality as a basis for montage in his acclaimed In the Mood for Love, as both main characters are discovered at their writing desks, framed within the additional frames of the set architecture, tonally connected to the idea that they are both trapped alone in their circumstances. In these series of shots from Martin Scorsese's The Age of Innocence, light tonality drives the edits. In this cut from Apocalypse Now, oral tonality is utilized. Overtonal is by its nature more abstract and complicated than the methods discussed up until now. As Eisenstein puts it, from the moment that overtones can be heard parallel with the basic sound, there also can be sensed vibrations, oscillations that cease to impress as tones, but rather as purely physical displacements of the perceived impression. One scene famous for cross-cutting and rife with overtonal montage is the baptism sequence from The Godfather Part 1. Many themes, tones, and overtones intermingle in this sequence that treats violence as a holy writ, shows the connection between religion and corruption, and sanctifies the actions of a murderer.
I do renounce them.
Filmmakers like Terrence Malick and David Lynch, famous for their poetic approach to filmmaking, where mood and tone supersede logic and plot, oftentimes rely heavily on overtonal montage. Eisenstein said intellectual montage is montage not of general physiological overtonal sounds, but of sounds and overtones of an intellectual sort. One glaringly obvious example from a well-known film is the cross-cutting of the caribou being slaughtered with Willard killing Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now. The famous match cut in 2001: A Space Odyssey, from the bone to the orbital weapon satellite, is another prime example of intellectual montage. So there you have it, folks. Eisenstein's 5 methods of montage, explained and exemplified for your viewing pleasure.
Okay, just gonna pause that, get out of there. So this clip about montage in your first film analysis, one of the things that I'm gonna have you do is look at, is to think about first the cinema and society. So I'm gonna have you look at how the film kind of relates to current society and in what ways. So there'll be some points on discussing that. Then I'm gonna have you kind of pick apart and like almost scavenger hunt for specific techniques that have been used in the film, like, you know, camera movement, color, sound. So to kind of just, you know, keep an eye on those things. And each person will usually see different things. There's no real right answer for what you see in a film in terms of what techniques you notice that kind of are most important to you. And then I'll also have you look at different montages within the film, which are basically just edits, groupings that are edited together to say or do something. So to think about how, you know, in one scene, how it moves to another scene and why, because somebody's constructed all of that. And there's, you know, dozens of people basically like working to construct these things and doing it all with great intentions. So that's kind of what I'll have you look at. There'll be a worksheet to guide you through the process. And yeah, that's kind of what I will be sending you away with for the break. And let me just go back to my thing, and we're getting pretty close to wrapping up here. Just give it a sec to load. Okay, so I think I had 2 more little closing ones here. As always, all of these slides will be available in the course documents sort of as a PDF. They're a little rough and tumble, so if there's ever you want more information, of course, contact me. I'm always available. So yeah, one of the things I was going to kind of close with was this last film that I had you kind of look at. You know, it was really mostly a montage, but a montage where sometimes there's things that trick your eye. For example, there's a scene where, you know, a pair of hands is holding a knife to a woman's eye, and then it kind of cuts to this sort of moon and a cloud and a cow eye. And through these edits, what we think is that the woman's eye is going to be cut by the knife, but it's not, you know, it's actually just the way it's been edited, implied movement. So montage is really tricky. And I'm going to sort of ask you guys during the break to look at surrealism within this particular film. So I have some sort of text here about what, you know, what that means. And it's mostly what I'm trying to kind of get forward for the most part is that surrealist thinkers and filmmakers are kind of trying to redefine human awareness of reality by illustrating that those things that are real are things that we're sort of perceiving, and that reality is subject to, no limits beyond those that we kind of impose on it. So they're really kind of questioning the nature of perception and experience, and how also what you see and experience is an extension of your own mind. So they're kind of looking at all of these different things. Okay, so very important. Next week there is no Zoom class, but I am sending you off with a long film to watch. And also tonight at about 9:30 or so, the first major assignment is going to appear, and it's due, I believe, on the February the 24th, so after the break. So next class, if you do have questions about did you not what do we have, Destino? Maybe I will bring up the Destino for those of you who are interested in the surrealism stuff, for sure. Have a look at the Destino, which is kind of like the current day version of the Chien d'Andalou, but it's considerably more kind of modernized. I'm going to stick that in here for you. Sorry, that's just to one of you. I'll do everyone here. Okay, so for the remainder of class, I'm going to send you off on your own to watch Destino, which is by the same author, Salvador Dali, as the Chien, except for it's a lot more current and watchable and animated, and it's also a lot more commercial on some level. So I'm going to send you off to watch that and enjoy. Hopefully I've given you the right YouTube link as well. There's also in the first assignment, I'm going to put the first film, but I'm going to give you the link now because you do have about an hour before this class ends, which is, that'll get you through this movie. You could watch this entire film tonight and be ahead of time. The film is called The Lobster, and it's on Tubi TV. Which is giving me an issue right now. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to figure that out. I do have a version of it, but yeah, I'll have to put that in the assignments. But so it's called the movie to watch for next class is called The Lobster. I'll put this in the assignments also. And it's available on Tubi TV. Yeah, the slides, I'll be uploading them after class. I think I might have put some of them there already. Okay, so that's good. Okay, and for those of you, let me just stop my screen sharing here, and I'm going to screen share the trailer for the movie that I'm going to make you watch. It's kind of a, what's it called, a classic reference piece of current day surrealist cinema. I'm just going to use the desktop. Okay, here we go.
Have you ever been on your own before?
No, never.
Your last relationship lasted how many years?
Around 12.
Sexual preference?
Women. Is there a bisexual option available?
No, sir, this option is no longer available. And the dog?
My brother, he was here a couple of years ago, but he didn't make it.
Did you read the leaflet?
Yes, I did.
As you understand from your brother's experience.
If you fail to fall in love with someone during your stay here, you'll turn into an animal.
Have you ever danced with anybody? Yes.
As an animal, you'll have a second chance to find a companion.
What sort of dancing did you do?
Just depends on the music.
Mind if I join you?
It's no coincidence that the targets are shaped like single people and not couples.
Τον καιρό που μ' αγαπούσες, με ρωτάς ένα πρωί.
Did you catch rabbits? Catching a rabbit is difficult.
Thank you very much.
If you need more rabbits, I'll bring you more.
You promise?
Τότε γύρισα και σου είπα.
You can be a loner as long as you like. There is no time limit. Any romantic or sexual relations are punished.
Μα για μένα είσαι εσύ.
We have to be totally synchronized. 3, 2. You're like a brother to me. Oh, you're my best friend in the whole world.
I don't think I'm your best friend in the whole world.
Oh, hang on. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna cut that one short so it doesn't give away the end. And for the remainder of the class, I'll have you watch the Destino, which is nice and short. And does the link work? Trailers often will. It does, but you know, I'm trying to get you guys to get in there and watch these. So for the rest of the class, I think this is the full version. Yes, it is. Okay. Have a look at this and think about it in terms of the in terms of the Chien, how weird that kind of one was. And then this one is in collaboration with Disney. So total different vibe. Here's the link again in the chat. So open that up. Let me know if that link does not work for you, and we can watch that the remainder of the class. And then, I will upload all the sort of slides from today for those of you to reference, and also the assignment will appear as well. So for those of you who have not completed assignment 1, you better get on that, or you're going to start losing marks, which you don't want, because everyone should get an A+ in a film class, right? If you do the work and you're present, you should do well. So yeah. And have a good Zoom break next week. Take the time to really kind of watch the film that I upload in the assignment section, The Lobster, or you can go to Tubi TV and get it directly from there, or you can download it if you have some form of doing that for yourself. You can do that as well. And yeah, have a good break from Zoom, and we'll continue next week. If you want to reach me, you can always email me. I respond. Sometimes it might take me a night or something, but I will always get back to you. And if you have any questions or problems with uploading your first exercise, or if you have any questions about the first assignment, please, get in contact with me. I'm here to help you get through the course and to, learn some stuff and get a good grade for the rest of your sort of time. So yeah, feel free to contact me. Okay, that's it for today. Watch the Destino and watch The Lobster. You have a whole week to kind of watch it and think about it. And thank you for spending this Thursday early evening with me. Have a good rest of the night watching Destino, and maybe watching the whole Lobster too. Okay, when I disappear, you can disappear too. I'm gonna do my